Hello, my friends. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we have a story that is going to warm your heart in the most beautiful way. This is my own take on what might happen next with these wonderful characters. I hope it brings you as much joy as it brings me. You know what's beautiful about love? It doesn't always look like grand gestures. Sometimes love looks like a man standing in a small kitchen, grinding corn by hand, just to make someone smile. That's James, and that's exactly where our story begins. Picture this: a quiet countryside morning. The air smells like earth and fresh corn. James is already awake, moving carefully around the kitchen. He has a plan today, not just any meal. 4 dishes, all made from corn, all made with one person in mind: Diep. Because James noticed something. Yesterday, after Diep came back from meeting her mother, something in her eyes had changed. Not broken, but heavy, like a woman carrying something she didn't know how to put down. James didn't ask questions. He didn't push. He just went to work. What I love about James is that he understands love through action, not words. He doesn't say, "I'm here for you." He shows it by spending hours grinding corn, sieving flour, wrapping corn husks with patient hands. For me, this is the most beautiful kind of love. Quiet, steady, the kind that says, "You matter," without making a single sound. He borrowed a stone mill from 1985. Think about that for a moment. That millstone has been turning since before Diep was born. It has fed families through hard seasons, through celebrations, through ordinary Tuesday mornings. And now, James is using it to feed the woman he loves. He puts the corn kernels in, turns the stone slowly. The sound is soft and steady, like a heartbeat. The flour comes out fine and white. James catches it carefully in his hands. Nothing wasted, everything intentional. He sieved the flour twice, mixed it with water, let it rest. Then he prepared the corn husks, cutting them gently so they wouldn't tear. He mixed in glutinous rice because he read that it makes the dish softer, easier to eat, more comforting. Little Nye watched from the doorway. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but she felt it. Children always feel it. She sat quietly and watched her father cook with so much care. But here's the thing nobody saw coming. As James was wrapping the corn cakes in their husks, tying each one carefully so it wouldn't fall apart during steaming, Diep walked in. She had been quiet all morning, but when she saw the kitchen, when she saw the 4 dishes lined up, when she smelled that deep, warm aroma of freshly ground corn, something shifted in her face. She didn't cry. She just stood there for a moment, looking at everything James had prepared. And she said, very quietly, "You didn't have to do all this." James looked up and smiled. "I know," he said. "I wanted to." "That's not nothing. That's everything." Nye ran in from the doorway. "Mom, Dad made so many things. He made cake and soup and everything." She grabbed Diep's hand and pulled her toward the table. And just like that, the 3 of them sat down together. The corn silk tea was sweet and clear. The men porridge was soft and fragrant. The corn cake, wrapped in its green husks, smelled like a childhood memory. Diep took the first bite slowly. Her eyes closed for just a second. "This is a dish all older people have eaten before," James said gently. "I thought maybe it would feel familiar." But that's just the beginning of what this meal was about to unlock. Last we left off, the 3 of them had just sat down to a meal that James spent all morning preparing. 4 dishes. All from corn. All from love. But meals like this have a way of opening people up. Like water when a dam gives way. Slowly at first. Then all at once. Diep picked up the corn cake. She turned it over in her hands, peeled back the husk slowly, just like peeling a corn cob. The steam rose up soft and sweet. "When I was little," she said quietly, "my uncle used to make something like this. But it was much simpler. Just corn, no sticky rice, no milk." She smiled a little. "You had to drink a lot of water to get it down." Nee giggled. "That sounds terrible, Mom." "It was," Diep said, "but I loved it anyway." James watched her carefully. This was the most she had spoken all day. He didn't interrupt. He just listened. "We didn't have much back then," Diep continued. "But my uncle always made sure there was food. He worked so hard." She paused. "I never told him how much that meant to me." She looked down at the corn cake in her hands. "Let me ask you something. Have you ever had a meal that tasted like a memory? Not just food, but a feeling. A time when life was simple and someone took care of you." That's what this meal was for Diep. Every bite was reaching back through time. Here's what touches me about this moment. Diep grew up believing she was alone. No mother, no father, just an uncle who fed her and worked hard and never said much. But James, without even knowing her full story, recreated exactly that feeling of being cared for. He gave her back something she thought she had lost forever. And he did it with corn flour and a 1985 millstone. "Thank you," Diep said finally. She looked at James directly. "I know you cooked all this because of what happened yesterday." James nodded slowly. "I just wanted today to feel good." "It does," she said. "It really does." Nee held up her corn cake with both hands like a trophy. "Dad is a superhero chef," she announced to no one in particular. Diep laughed. A real laugh. Warm and surprised, like sunlight appearing after a cloudy morning. James felt something loosen in his chest. That laugh, that one small, genuine laugh from Diep, that was worth every hour at the millstone. And then, something beautiful happened. Diep reached over and poured James a cup of corn silk tea. She handed it to him carefully, both hands around the cup. "My uncle used to do this," she said softly. "He always said corn silk tea was good for your health. He made me drink it every summer." James took the cup, held it for a moment. "Then I'll drink every cup," he said. Nye immediately held out her cup too. "Me too. I want to be healthy like Dad." The three of them lifted their cups together. No ceremony, no big words. Just three people around a small table on a quiet countryside afternoon. This is what Diep chose. Not a house in the city, not a car, not a luxurious life. She chose this table, these two people. This simple, warm, honest life. And as the afternoon light came through the window and landed on the leftover corn husks and the empty bowls and Nye's happy face, something was quietly healing. The meal was over, but no one moved to clear the table yet. That happens sometimes with a really good meal. Everyone just sits, like they don't want to let the feeling go. Nye was humming softly to herself, turning a piece of corn husk into a little bracelet. James was refilling the tea. Diep was watching both of them. And in that quiet, something was becoming clear to her. She had spent so many years believing that family was something that had been taken from her. That she was the orphan, the one without, the one who never got to say, "Mom, Dad," like other children did. That wound had been there so long. She had stopped noticing it, until yesterday, when it was suddenly opened again. But look around this table. Look at what was actually here. A man who woke up early and worked all morning just to see her smile. A little girl who called her mom like it was the most natural word in the world. A home that smelled like corn and wood smoke and something very close to peace. Let me tell you something. Healing doesn't always come with a big moment. Sometimes it comes very quietly. Like corn silk tea. Sweet and simple, and good for you in ways you don't fully realize until later. James looked at her across the table. "Are you okay?" he asked. The same question he had asked yesterday, but it felt different today. Yesterday, she had said she was fine. Today, she meant it. "I think I am," she said. "I really think I am." She looked out the window at the guava orchard, at the green fields, at the simple, beautiful countryside life she had chosen. Not settled for, chosen. With her whole heart. "Those things from yesterday," she said slowly, "they're part of me. I can't pretend they're not, but they're not bigger than this." She looked at James, then at Nishai. "You two are the most important thing." James reached across the table and covered her hand with his. And she looked up from her corn husk bracelet. "Group hug?" she asked hopefully. They both laughed, and they pulled her in. This is the part that gives me hope. Not the big dramatic moment, not a grand resolution. Just three people around a table, choosing each other. Diep didn't have the family she deserved as a child, but she is building one now, with her own hands, in her own way. And watching her choose this life, this love, this simplicity, that feels like the most courageous thing a person can do. Later that afternoon, the three of them walked to the guava orchard. Nee ran ahead, checking each tree. James carried the basket. Diep walked beside him, her shoulder almost touching his. The guavas were ripe and sweet. The sky was wide and blue. And somewhere in the back of Diep's heart, something that had been closed for a very long time was beginning, slowly and carefully, to open. She doesn't know it yet, but the most beautiful moment of this family's story is still ahead. What I think comes next will warm your heart in ways you might not expect. Because sometimes the people we close our hearts to are the very ones holding the key.